just having a look at our next topic, and that is that we need to make sure that our change management activities are designed around our customers versus around technology. Now, some of the challenges that we have with this, of course, is that when it comes to traditional change management, it was always following the step-by-step process. However, in the agile world, a challenge that we've got is that some people think that our change management activities need to be done for each sprint. Okay? Then we've got challenges where, in an agile world, we're working with extremely ambitious timeframes that are a lot more ambitious than we would have had in a waterfall context. The change gets implemented in really close intervals. There's a constant impact to stakeholder groups. We're also seeing that there's this challenge around us having to deploy agile in great scale. And then, very importantly, the impact that this has to our stakeholders when it comes to change fatigue. Because if we are releasing with every sprint, our stakeholders are being bombarded with the change that's coming towards them. So, of course, one of the things that we need to have a look at is how do we deal with, for example, change fatigue? So, Rodney, I'm going to ask you if you can give us some ideas on that.
I think I've already touched on that one to say, your release plan should be realistic from a change, perspective. It's one thing having, the technical guys telling you this is our release plan. Every third week we're releasing something. I think it's important as a change person to look into what goes into that release. What is the impact of that? And how big is your stakeholder group? Because if you're releasing every third week, I can assure you change fatigue will creep in very quickly. Yeah. So you almost need to have a say in terms of how much can we take on as an organization at that point in time. Obviously, your business readiness is just as important. Those are the things that you can start engaging the technical guys. Look here, guys. We have people readiness, we have business readiness, we have solution readiness. Let's make sure that we align those, because those will have your training implications, for instance. You don't want to be running training programs every third week. You don't want to do that. But you want to have a better understanding of the broader lending landscape and manage that process. So to me, what's important, it's not how much you're churning in terms of the technology, is how much of change is happening as a result of quantifying what is needed at that point in time. Communication is just as important. For Agile, it means you communicate more and more, but it's targeted. And what I've learned is that you need to put your users at the center of the entire change process, as opposed to your broader stakeholders. So for me, your customers should be the ones that you're spending most of your time with. Because if we look at our typical stakeholder engagement processes, we don't necessarily look at our customers. We look at who's paying for that project. So it's a combination of a lot of factors, but for me, the release is one thing that I've seen that it could basically pose a huge risk for any agile project.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And yes.
A quick point on the fatigue bit. Very few organizations have been able to get a holistic enterprise-wide view of change that is impacting them. And so when you start getting those sorts of tools in place, or if you're lucky enough to have an organization that is able to give you that sort of view, then the organization is able to start making strategic decisions around what we're actually going to be pushing down to people at any given time. The problem that we have right now is they don't know. They have no idea about all of the different changes that are hitting all of the different stakeholder groups. So that's why we need to start looking at technology and other solutions to try and get that view.
It's a very valid point. And Kobus, perhaps if you can just share with us how agile timeframes have sort of the pressure around that has impacted your team and how you've addressed that.
Yeah, so, and you've heard this before, change management, and if you haven't been painted into a corner once, twice, 3, 5, 10 times in your life, you haven't been part of change management. So because everything is dependent on, for instance, the technology and or the solution delivery, and I'm talking about a typical application that we are delivering. And you're getting little bits and pieces of information along the way, and then by the time they're landing it in pilot, everything needs to be there. But we are dependent on some of the code coming from that solution in order to deliver learning material. And although we're accelerating it as quickly as possible, that could take even up to 3 weeks if you're quick. So we are still finding it on a daily basis, because they can, and I'm talking about they are part of the bigger team. The technology developers, you will find that you get slippage along the way, or it can go well, but all of a sudden they want the final change deliverable out there. Make sure that you guide and direct them in terms of what is doable, possible, at what point in time, in order to keep this entire exercise sane. So that is quite important, that you are close to business, that you are close to your technology lead, that you are close to the participants in that particular program, so that you fully understand what is doable and possible at what point in time.
Good, thank you, Cobus. So let me ask the audience, do you have any questions for the team around these sorts of challenges where we need to change our delivery approach?
From my side, I'd like to add another challenge there amongst the challenges that you've listed. One of our key challenges is how change management works in relation to project management. Because as you said, in the heart of everything we do is our business stakeholders or is our stakeholders. Whilst from the project management side, they are chasing the timelines, the delivery dates, etc., etc. And very often, I find that we do tend to clash, if I can put it that way. So how would one manage that situation?
That's a great question. Thank you very much. Rodney?
I think for me, the first point is to look at how can you integrate the change process with a broader project management process, okay? To kind of mirror that, so that when it comes to deadlines, at least you're talking about the same thing. I think from a waterfall perspective, it's been pretty easier because you can see more or less what needs to be done by when. So you can easily align your change process right from your demand for change to your adoption. So I think that for me is a bit easier. Where it becomes tricky is with Agile. You only know this much at that point in time, but working towards a particular deadline, it becomes more of a challenge there. But what is also helpful is to make sure that you work closely with the project manager, if that's the person who's leading the project, to have the same definition of what he or she's thinking in terms of the timelines. Because we want to make sure that by the time you hit that milestone, you've done all your preparatory change work already. So there shouldn't be any surprise, but communication it's so important to make sure that we work off one plan, not two plans. So you can't have a project plan on its this way and have a change management separately. To me, you only need one plan and one plan alone.
Yeah.
If you do that and use that as a launch pad for your daily activities, you won't be having a lot of conflict with regard to those timelines and what is expected at any point in time. Those have been my experiences, really.
So other than the day-to-day working between the change manager and the project manager, the ultimate vision of a change manager is to facilitate behavior. And you are talking about shifting people's mindset, which is not cast in stone in terms of time. So when you measure your critical success factors for a change manager, it's more about how you facilitate that behavior. But from a project management, it's very much more about the budget and the time and the scope. So to actually marry, we do have a plan where our change management initiatives are actually aligned to the project management. But if, whilst you're facilitating behavior, you've got people who are in different levels of adopting whatever you're trying to do, but the project manager wants to forge on and carry on. So it's basically the challenge of marrying those two in terms of what is success, what does success look like for project management and change management.
Yes, very good.
Just remember, you've also got your stabilization component that you can look at, whether it is in an agile or a waterfall format. So while you might not have everyone where you need to have them by an end point in time, your work can continue. Your engagement, some of the initiatives that you can look at to drive sustainability can continue. They don't have to be limited to to the project timelines per se.
All right, thank you, Linda. Yes, question
Thanks,
at the
it's
back.
Liesel from APSA. So it's more comment to the lady in terms of project management versus change, being a change practitioner. I think with the new mindset of agility or agile comes new required skills or new capability on our part as change practitioners. So this will require that as much as what you're not a project manager, you need to have some form of project management capability. So if you understand project management, basic fundamentals, you'd be able to put the lens of project management either on the change practitioners or the other way around in terms of your change management program. Because as much as Rodney mentioned, we've got tools, and that's hardware or any software that can help us manage our change. It also means that we need a new skill. And if the new skill is, I need to be analytical, I need to have project management skills, that is what we need to acquire. You might not want to go for your degree in project management, but get the fundamentals, because then you can start talking the right language when you engage with a project manager in terms of it.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think we had another person, there was somebody here. Maritza.
I think what we also need to bring across to our project managers is no matter what the technology is or the process that's changing, without the people, it will fail.
Yeah.
We need to get that mindset with our project managers to also understand if you want the sprint to be as successful and reach it within the specific timeline, you need to also give me sufficient time to drive the change and communicate sufficiently, because I'm there to support you and making this a success.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. We have somebody here in front. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually trying to figure it in my mind, because with Agile, we're talking Scrum Masters and all that, and in project management, or rather with PMs, it becomes a bit of a challenge, and not just a challenge, also it brings in fear, because Agile, when it came as if it's replacing project managers with Scrum Masters. But if these roles are explained clearly and we understand what the role is, it would make things even simpler. And I think that integration and the conversations that we need to drive within the Agile world would be simpler.
Very valuable point. Thank you so much for that.
So I can perhaps
Yes, Quibus. And Tamara, if you can just go around. Thank you.
I can
Yes.
perhaps just echo that. And I think the whole thing around project and program management is almost like that. We don't want to let go of the past, and embrace the new roles that's associated with a call it a pure or maybe not so pure agile model. So I think it's, typically it's still out there and it's still embraced, where instead we needed to let it go. So
Yes, and I think it is a challenge. I think there has been real fear, and sometimes with that fear, then it drives resistance. So very good point. Thank you. Yes, we have another question.
Okay, morning everyone.
Morning.
My question is, okay, not from a change perspective, but sitting in projects sometimes as an SME, you would see fights between the project managers and business, and as well as change, because the business would want like the plans. Where's the project plan? What are we going to do at what time? And then the change guys would want to sort of like know what's the business case so that they can extract certain information from it and actually do their documentation. And then the project management guys would be like, no, we're operating on Agile, and for us that means we do and document later. So my question is that the correct synopsis of what Agile is? Is it about doing and documenting later, or because at that point no one understood what Agile is, I think to this point still.
All right, so Kobus, yeah?
Yeah, I think this is a catch-22. So I still support, a little bit of documentation around this. In the case of change, you are generating that documentation almost as you go along. It needs to slot in one way or another with what the program is doing. And obviously, you need to keep track of what's happening in I want to call it the progression of the project as well. So these two things need to dovetail with one another on a very regular basis. And, therefore the relationship between the project manager, Scrum Master, and also the change manager is absolutely vital. And, all of that gets established when we're talking about scope. The scope in this particular case, what grouping of user stories are we dealing with? And this is my point. You need to be in the room as a change person. You need to be not subservient to anyone in the program. You are a collaborative role player at an equal level to anyone else in that program. So it's important to be in the room, to have a voice in the room. And then you can set your alignment from there as a collaborative approach across the different role players. So not subservient.
If I may add one point
you,
as well.
Kobus.
I think our challenge is that we've been managing change using deliverables. I'm talking about documentation, this and that and that. Okay. I think we need to reorientate ourselves and say, let's pursue the outcome. The outcome towards achieving what the business case requires of us as a project team. Because as long as we have the deliverable, thinking in our mind, the PM will always want to see your risk plan. They'll want to see your training plan and all of that. So you end up now spending so much time documenting things again. Agile is not about doing documentation later. It's all about looking at what you require at that point in time to get the job done. I think just adding to what Kobus has said, it's just as important. But being there when the discussions take place is important. Technical or not technical, as a change person, you'll begin to learn a few things as well and begin to master, ambiguity, so to speak.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that feedback. So just to wrap up on design of change management activities is we need to focus on doing the right things at the right time. We need to make sure that whatever our change approach is, that it is designed for specific stakeholder groups. We also need to implement iterative change management. So we've spoken about the iterations that are used. Linda shared some examples of that. Then also having a look at our readiness for change. So there is an element of being the gatekeepers as change facilitators to make sure that business is ready for what's coming. And then, of course, our change activities should be packaged more around releases versus sprints. So what are we releasing into production that can be consumed collectively by our stakeholders? And then lastly is making sure that we're giving people the right knowledge and skills at exactly the right time. Okay, and it also links into the MVC, which is what is the minimum viable change, which is in fact our next topic.